How's it going, guys? I'm Robert from Machado Visuals, and Christmas came early this year because Sony has released FX9 Firmware version 2.0 an entire month early. It welcomes a handful of improvements, and here are some of my favorites. Finally, we have full frame 4K 60. This has absolutely been my biggest gripe with the camera so far. I love using full frame, but absolutely dread having to switch back and forth between S and Q for slow motion. I'd have to go into the menu and switch my scan mode to Super 35, then go into my S and Q settings to change my frame rate. This has caused me so many slowdowns on set. When I'm on the go, the last thing I want to do is stop for a minute to dig into the menu so I can change my frame rate. Most of the time, I just decided to shoot in Super 35 mode, so my S and Q setting stays persistent. Now we have a 5K sensor scan option, so there is a slight crop, but it's not a big deal. You've probably noticed that this video is in a wider aspect ratio than usual, and it's not because I'm trying to be cinematic, but because one of the big additions is DCI 4K. This is available in all the 4K modes, including full frame 6K, full frame 5K, and Super 35 4K. Another small addition is the ability to shoot true 24p, and this is great for those planning on using the camera in cinema applications. The FX9 now adds eye autofocus to its bag of tricks, and as you can see, it's pretty baller. I never thought I'd say this, but I have been absolutely loving the face detect autofocus on the FX9, so it's really exciting to now have eye autofocus. It's incredibly functional and gives me total peace of mind, especially for interview work. Talent can always shift a few tenths of a foot, and the FX9 doesn't miss a beat when it happens. When you're shooting on a long lens and a wide f-stop, inches matter. It also looks like face and eye detection have been improved in S-Log 3 while in Cine Eye mode, which is great because that's what I'm shooting 80% of the time. Another welcome feature is the ability to move the focus area via the touchscreen, and this is so much better than using the D-pad on the camera. Speaking of the touchscreen, this one actually surprised me a bit. You can now use the viewfinder as a touchscreen to adjust certain settings in the status menu. It's actually way faster than digging into the menus, and the biggest reason I see myself using this is when I need to change resolution or image or scan modes. One downside is that it doesn't look like you can adjust your S&Q frame rate from the status menu, which is kind of a bummer. You can now raise your ISO up to 102,400 or plus 27 dB of gain. I don't know how usable it is, but it's nice to have that ability in those dire need situations. In the last version, you were limited to 12,800 in high base. This one's pretty self-explanatory. We can import custom LUTs. For the most part, I found myself sticking with S709 when monitoring, so I'm probably not as excited over this as other people might be. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. This update now unlocks 6G SDI for 4K output. There have been a handful of times that I've needed a 4K signal through SDI, so this is another welcome change. This is great for people that use external recorders, but one thing to note is that this disables SDI too, so if you're planning on using a recorder, you'll probably still want to use the stock viewfinder for camera settings. Another note is that you won't be able to output a monitor LUT unless you enable internal recording, and this isn't a big deal if you're planning on using a recorder as your primary means of acquisition, but just make sure to load up your monitor with your LUTs. S&Q has a few expanded frame rates in 1080. Now we can shoot up to 180 frames per second in full frame 2K scan. I don't know anyone that has the extension unit, but they can now receive 16-bit RAW out, which is pretty cool. It might be worth it to rent one for a weekend just to try this out. As welcome as these changes are, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are still a handful of things missing from the camera, most of which I mentioned in a previous video. Clip name format hasn't changed and doesn't increment by card number. This one drives me crazy. Nearly every other camera has this ability, and it's really important to have good file management, and a lot of shows have very, very specific naming formats. Sony, just import this from the FS7, please. Playback is still a struggle. It would be really cool to use the multifunction dial or even touch operation to scrub through clips. There's still no option to bake in your exposure index when using a monitor LUT. I'd love to have this for when I just hand off S-Log footage. Again, this was in the FS7 and I'd love for it to make it to the FX9. There's still no ability to view monitor LUTs while in 1080. I don't even know what to say to that. This firmware came at a bit of a surprise since it wasn't slated to release until October, but I'm not complaining. I'm pretty sure they wanted to roll out all these features before the impending A7S III release so that it didn't look like a lackluster camera. That being said, that release date is coming up quick and I'm planning on doing another live stream unboxing and first look once I get mine in, so I'll probably do some live demo to see how well it matches with the FX9, so be sure to keep it locked on the channel. That being said, if there's anything specific you want to see during the stream, let me know in the comments below. Hopefully this video is helpful in some way. I'm definitely happy with all these welcome upgrades. It almost feels like I'm receiving a new camera. There are a few other additions I didn't mention in this video, and to see a full list, check the description. After using the FS7 for years, the FX9 definitely feels like it's in a whole other tier of camera. The level of detail and color rendering is something that I've never seen before on my FS7, and I've used that camera a lot. If you have any questions on this video, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.